Hey, welcome back to the show. We're keeping it real, goes right. Welcome back to Real Take Sports Talk live here on YouTube. Hope you guys are all having a great day. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. NFL draft. I think we just went off. Are we back? Okay, I think we're back. Sorry about that. Anyway, Alex Smith also retiring from the National Football League. That was huge news today. We're gonna be talking about that much more here live on Real Take Sports Talk. Andrew, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing better than I was a week ago, dude. My Knicks are on a 6-game winning streak. If you looked at the power rankings, my New York Mets are a top 10 team, so life is pretty good. I can dress like a dick when my teams are winning.
Well, you dress like a dick when your teams aren't winning too. So, anyway, so Andrew, let's talk about the biggest news. As I mentioned on the beginning of the show, let's talk about big news out of the NFL today. Alex Smith, former quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, and then the Washington football team, has retired from the NFL. He was, of course, a number one pick in the 2005 NFL draft. And this has got a lot of people talking about, him, his legacy, his great comeback. We know he came back after 17 surgeries on that leg rather, that was demolished in that 2018, I believe, is a week 10 game. But Alex Smith is officially retired. There was talk that he might go to Jacksonville. Urban Meyer even indicated that he wanted Alex Smith. Alex Smith indicated that this was something that could happen. But unfortunately, it looks like he's decided, I'm going to spend more time with family. I'm going to spend more time with my kids. I made the NFL comeback, and arguably the greatest comeback ever. But Alex Smith now officially gone from the NFL, retiring. Andrew, what is your reaction to this news? And what is Alex Smith's legacy? Because it's a complicated one.
So my first thing is I just want to congratulate Alex Smith. He had a hell of a career. He did have a roller coaster of a career. And regardless of what people might think of, he might not have lived up to the standards of a number one overall pick. I was looking at some stats the other day. Did you know, I think he might be the only quarterback in NFL history. He has 40 wins for both an AFC team and an NFC team. So there is that. His legacy, it's a weird one because, as I said before, he was a number one pick, didn't necessarily live up to the hype of being a number one pick. But listen, not all number one picks do live up to the hype of being a number one pick. And given how some number one picks have fared, given how long he played, how many games he won, like what does he have, like a 69? I think his winning percentage is like 69% or something over his career. And considering the fact that he basically overcame an injury that A, could have killed him, and then B, worked his way back onto the field and led a joke of a franchise. The Sacramento Kings of football took that franchise, who picked number 2 overall the year before, to a playoff berth, hosted a playoff game, was 5-1 as a starter. I think when you think about his legacy, you have to look at, obviously you're going to look at the entirety of his career. Wasn't necessarily, I think, what was it? Kaepernick took over for him first in San Francisco. Then he lost his spot when he got hurt. He lost his spot to Mahomes. And then here, he had his last hurrah with Washington. So it's a complicated career, but I think his legacy is going to be, he is going to be remembered as that guy who almost had his life ended from a football injury. And then not only did he come back strong, like he beat it, he lived, he came back and he led arguably the biggest joke of a franchise in sports to the playoffs his only year back. That's my take on Alex Smith.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of points there, and then I think that's like kind of why the story of Alex Smith is something like you could write volumes on. You couldn't just write one book on his entire career. You could write like different volumes. Like there'd be sequels to that shit. But Alex Smith, I think, is probably like there's a lot to say, right? Like I said, but Alex Smith, I think his legacy is going to come down to being at his worst. he's probably one of the best quarterbacks at his worst, if that makes sense. Meaning that his floor, like after he got everything together, after the San Francisco 49ers organization got everything together, because it was a mess of an organization his first few years, but from 2011 until the end of his career in 2020, his floor was the highest of almost any quarterback in the NFL. He won games. He has a above 60% winning percentage. He mentored a lot of quarterbacks. Whether you look in 2012 when Kaepernick took over for Alex Smith, when he was in Kansas City, Mahomes took over for Alex Smith after that. So quarterbacks have had success. Who knows what's going to happen with Taylor Heineke? Maybe that year under Alex Smith could help him catapult him into being a quality NFL starter. We'll find that out this year. But I think Alex Smith is going to be remembered, obviously, for grooming a lot of these quarterbacks, for being a great teammate, for arguably being the best game manager in NFL history. And on top of all of that, also this amazing, tremendous comeback he had that there's not a lot of players. There's not a lot of people who could come back and do a lot of, do everyday things like Alex Smith was able to do. Alex Smith defied the odds, and he proved, I know it's cliche, right? He proved that you can do anything with perseverance, and he persevered. And the story of Alex Smith, honestly, is a great one. There's talk that they might name the Comeback Player of the Year award after him, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. He literally, this is a person who had sepsis. He had an infection. He had an infection in his leg, gangrene basically growing in his leg, and they almost had to amputate it or he would die. He was literally just not long from dying if they didn't catch that. So the fact that he was able to just not even play football, but lead his team to a playoff game, to a playoff berth, amazing. This is literally a fairy tale ending, but I thought it was great. I thought, Alex Smith, we have a statement, by the way, from Alex Smith, so let's actually read that out real quick. So in a statement Alex Smith made, he said, I want to say thank you for believing in me, and thank you for helping me believe in myself and in the impossible. Because even though I've got plenty of snaps left in me after 16 years of giving this game everything I've got, I can't wait to see what else is possible. And again, it's just, he even to the end, he's humble because he knows, I think he knows that, his career, while he could play for a few more years, he might be a backup, he might be, a transitional piece of quarterback. I don't think he wants that. And I think he kind of understands that the current day NFL has, as far as him being a starter, it's probably slim pickings, if we're being honest, because there was talk that he was going to go be basically the backup to Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. And I don't think he wants to do that, So, again, though, Alex Smith, I think, he's one of the most underrated stories in the NFL, and he hasn't gotten his due, I think, till now. A lot of people after the injury kind of magically noticed how great Alex Smith was, but this is someone who's just been literally, I don't think he's had a losing record since 2011 as a starter in every season. He's just won games. That's all he does. I had Ben, our colleague Ben, on the show earlier this month, and he was just talking about how Alex Smith, all he does is win games. And that's what he did up until the end. He won games. So kudos to Alex Smith. We're going to miss you, but, I feel like he'll be around. Whether it's in the booth or whether it's, somewhere else, I think Alex Smith will be around.
He definitely has the makings of a coach. He definitely has the makings of, given his story and everything, he could be, I could see him maybe coach in high school. He could, take a college job, an offensive coordinator job, because he definitely understands be a quarterback's coach. He definitely understands the quarterback position. And listen, given his resume of guys that he's developed, that he's mentored and everything like that, I mean, I'm not going to say Kaepernick was a world beater, but Kaepernick was better than some of the guys that I saw some teams, throw out there this year. And, Mahomes, he mentored that guy. As much as Andy Reid has gone into the makings of what Mahomes has become and that team around him, a lot of that, the whole point of somebody sitting behind another quarterback is to learn from that quarterback, and just probably all the information that Alex Smith instilled in him, taught that kid. It's invaluable. So I could definitely see him coaching, whether or even in the booth. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like football will be a part of his life, just whether it's in the booth, whether it's as a commentator, whether it's as an analyst. I don't think we've seen the last of Alex Smith. Definitely not in football.
Yep, same here. Same here. I think Alex Smith is going to do wonderful things, whether he's in the booth, whether he's at home with his family. Either way, wish him luck, man. Alex Smith, great story. Everyone loves Alex Smith. I think that's undeniable. You know who else everyone loves, Andrew? And they might not know it. Mr. Gardner, Flint Minshew II. We talk every week. We have our weekly segment, the Minshew moment, and it's back. And Andrew, this week, we spent a lot of time in the past talking about, potential landing spots for Minshew or, where he might be a good fit. And I think we've exhausted a lot of that. There hasn't been a lot of news on specifically Minshew and where he might end up as of recently. There was an article, I think, recently that said he might be a good fit for Seattle, but we'll see how realistic that actually is, right? I wanted to just spend a little bit, though, talking about how Gardner Minshew and his production on the field has kind of gone under the radar. And for those of you who don't know, let me put out my handy-dandy Minshew meter. So Minshew Mania was running wild the past few years. Gardner Minshew in his career, 37 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 5,530 yards, 7 wins to 13 losses. That is not his fault. The Jacksonville Jaguars are putrid. He also was 6-6 in his rookie year, so that's something to take note of. Also, swagger over 9,000. Cannot overstate that last part, as we saw last week with his makeover, over 9,000. But
Minshew, I was scared when he dropped those pictures. I was terrified. I'm serious. I was terrified. I was like, my team has to play against that shit.
Yeah, the confidence was insane out of Minshew in those pictures, but. We've seen that production. We've seen the production. He doesn't turn the ball over. He completes over 60% of his passes. He has a decent record as a starter, and arguably his rookie year probably should have been rookie of the year. He went 6-6 as a starter as opposed to Kyler Murray, who I believe went like 5-10-1, and Minshew actually had better numbers per game. But let's not talk about that. But why do you think Minshew has gone under the radar? Is it Jacksonville Jaguars? Is it them as an organization? Is it, maybe people see something that doesn't show up on film automatically and they have to analyze it? Because statistically, he's doing well. If you look at how he does against, against all these different defenses, he doesn't turn the ball over, and he does a lot of things you like to see out of a quarterback, going through his reads, going through his progressions, extending plays with his legs. He does a lot of that kind of stuff. And it reminds you a lot of an Alex Smith type quarterback, which, again, is not an insult at all. It's a compliment. But, Andrew, what is it? What is it about Gardner Minshew that you think turns GMs or coaches off? What is it that, they might not like? Why is he not getting the credit that he probably deserves?
So first off, I think a lot of it has to do with he's in that small market. The small market that is pretty much every team in the AFC South outside of Houston. And the issue is that they just don't get the same love. And given the season that they just came off of, where Jacksonville was 1-15, they did win that week 1 game against Indy and didn't win again. I think part of the problem is that it's Jacksonville. I mean, that's all I have to say, man. It's Jacksonville. He's not a bad quarterback. I mean, I get to watch him play twice a year against my team. He's not a bad quarterback. He can extend plays. Obviously he's not Tom Brady. He's obviously not Lamar Jackson, but he's a guy, like the numbers show. Like, you can put him out there, he can win you some games if he has anything similar to a team around him. So I just think what turns a lot of these GMs and a lot of these people off is that, the NFL is kind of becoming more of like, it's like a flashy thing. And most of the teams, they want to find the flashy quarterback. It's either they want the flashy quarterback or Tom Brady's the only one who's not flashy, but Tom Brady's been doing it for so long. You know what I'm saying? He's going to, wherever he goes, the cameras go just because he's been doing it for so long. Everybody else, unless, they're doing something really flashy, whether they're Kyler Murray is, rolling out, breaking 3 tackles, and then throwing a Hail Mary that DeAndre Hopkins catches over 3 dudes. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it is. And that's just not Jacksonville. Like, it's a small market. It's similar to what I experienced with Derrick Henry, where Derrick Henry was leading the league in rushing for the entire year, and it completely went under the radar. It completely went under the radar just because Tennessee's a small market. So it just has to do with the fact that he's in a small market, and the team isn't doing well. Like, the team didn't do well this past season. So he's a really good quarterback, though. I think he'll land on his feet wherever he ends up. And I think it's just a shame, though, because he's not a bad quarterback, and given how he's young too. That's the thing. He's young. He's on a player-friendly contract and everything like that. Like, I understand, a lot of teams would be like, obviously, like, maybe some teams would want Russell Wilson over him, but it's just, given the money and everything like that, and given Russ's age and everything like that, I don't know. So we'll see what happens with Minshew, but I think he should get a lot more credit.
Yeah, I mean, if you said it very blatantly, I think it's a low-risk move. If you're a team that needs a quarterback, it's a low-risk move. He's in a situation where they've already brought in a potential backup quarterback to the number 1 pick that they're going to draft in Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. So Minshew's likely on his way out. They want to get rid of him one way or another. You also have the fact that he's on his rookie deal. He still has 2 years. If you pick up his 5th-year option, you potentially 3 years on his rookie deal as a 6th-round pick. So he's not making that much money. You wouldn't have to pay him that much money. And he can come in and he can, at worst, be a really, really good game-managing quarterback. So I never saw why people were not noticing him. Maybe it is because he plays in Jacksonville. I think that's probably what it comes down to. He's slipped under the radar. But then again, if you think, isn't it their job to find these people who slip under the radar? Isn't it like if you're a scout, if you're a GM, if you're in player development or whatever, isn't it your job to find out the people who are slipping under the radar so you can sign them, so you can take advantage of a potential opportunity? If you're the Bears, if you're the New England Patriots, if you're any team that potentially might need a quarterback, why don't I don't get it. And it's especially the Bears. Like obviously you're not going to pay Mitch Trubisky like $20 million a year. That would be a dumb move. But but this option with Minshew is on the table for them. And it's a situation where if Andy Dalton doesn't play well or if Minshew beats him out, great. Because then you don't have to pay Andy Dalton, on another contract. He can go away after a year. But with them, and again, it comes back to the Bears. Because the Bears right now are the most ideal fit, and they're honestly the only team left I could realistically see pursuing Minshew for anything resembling a starting role. But again, these people in Bears player development, these people in their personnel department, I don't think they know what they're doing, because you literally have one of the most, arguably the most underrated player in the NFL. The person in the NFL who doesn't turn the ball over the most, who while on a shit team, somehow found a way to not turn the ball over or take a lot of sacks. Again, it baffles me. It baffles me how anyone in that personnel department still has a job at this point after the big Mitch Trubisky debacle. It baffles me that they haven't gone out and at least made this low-risk move. And it also baffles me that they're not even looking to draft a quarterback this year. That they're just going to ride it out with Andy Dalton and waste Khalil Mack's years as a Bear. Yeah, they made the playoffs last year. Oh, they made the playoffs. They were 8-8 in a 7-team playoff. They won. They were in the playoffs by default because Arizona didn't show up in their last few weeks. It wasn't because they won. I'm pretty sure didn't they? They started the year 5-1, and then they finished it. 3-7.
People were calling them historically the worst 5-1 team they'd ever seen.
And they probably were one of the worst 5-1 teams we've ever seen. And it's, why? It's because of moves like this. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have the foresight to take a chance. A very small chance, I might add, on Gardner Minshew. That 6th-round pick you're going to probably spend on Minshew, What's that going to go to? Who are you going to draft? Because you've already shown that you can't draft anybody if you're the Bears. You've already shown that you don't know what you're doing. You might as well just take a chance. Who knows? Is he going to be the next Tom Brady? Hell if I know. Is he going to be the next Alex Smith? Hell if I know. But what I do know is the potential is there, the production is there, and the intangibles are there. Yeah, and usually those three things all together, plus a good defense, plus if you rebuild your offensive line, plus you already have some weapons at receiver and a running back, it might be a recipe for, something better than they've had now. It might be a recipe for some success. I don't know. I'm just an asshole on the internet, right? But it doesn't take a genius to figure out, you got problems and you have a potential solution right there. They're just choosing not to go with it.
I mean, the only thing I could think of coming out of Chicago is just that Andy Dalton is a brand name, especially, he did play for Cincinnati for all those years.
Are you trying to tell me Andy Dalton's going to sell tickets in Chicago?
You know what?
Tell me Andy Dalton's going to come on, dude.
I'm not telling you that he's better. What I'm saying is that to the casual fan, he's more of a name, because I think the problem with a lot of people is I think Minshew is so unknown to so many people because a lot of casuals don't pay attention to Jacksonville, that I think that he's just so unknown that they're banking on the fact that, the casual fan would sit there and be like, Minshew, who the hell is this? And they're not willing to take that chance. So listen, it's not the first time the Bears have done something dumb. There's a lot of organizations out there, especially up there in that NFC North, that pretty poorly run organizations, between them and Detroit. Who's the other team in the NFC North? It's them, Detroit,
the Packers,
Bay, and who's the
Vikings.
Yeah. So, not a lot of smart moves have been made up there in the NFC North recently. So this could just be another one of the very, the genius moves that are being made up there in the NFC North.
Yeah.
So
the genius moves, like making Kirk Cousins the first player in NFL history to get a fully guaranteed contract.
Yep. With a 1-9 record, in primetime games.
If I was a Vikings fan, I would have just quit watching football.
Hey, I got to talk to Griffin. I got to see what he thinks about this.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, Andrew. Let's talk about Zion. So, as you mentioned to me before we started, the Zion Williamson obviously is not doing as well as many thought he would, or the team rather is not doing as well as many thought they would. So why don't you tell us? You have a little segment on Zion Williamson. Yeah. Why don't you explain us what this is about?
So, preface first, Zion. I don't know if a lot of you are paying attention to the NBA. Zion is tearing it up. He's averaging almost 27 a game. I don't know like the full stats. I just know every time I turn on the TV and it's Zion, it's always he had 30 this night, 27 this night, 36 this night. Zion is balling. The Pelicans are the Pelicans. What I see out of the Pelicans, out of New Orleans, is literally what went down with Anthony Davis all over again, which is they're failing to put a team around him. They went out, they acquired Eric Bledsoe. They went out, they got Lonzo, they got Brandon Ingram. And, I mean, for the most part, Brandon Ingram was an all-star. Zion was an all-star this year. But the rest of that supporting cast, man, is just they are not getting it done. And based on Zion's post-game yesterday, it sounds to me like Zion's time in New Orleans could be ending sooner rather than later. So I watched my team yesterday. Knicks on a 6-game winning streak, by the way. If you are not sold on the Knicks yet right now, dude, they're going to be a tough out. We are going to be a playoff team, and we are going to be a tough out in the fucking playoffs. As one of the I mean this. The numbers say one thing, dude. We're the best defensive team in the NBA.
Right. So just going back to Zion real quick. So apparently in his post-game presser, he was asked about playing at MSG, and he responded with that by saying, I quote, "I'm glad you asked about that, actually. New York is the mecca of basketball. I love playing here. I played here in college. This is my first time playing in the pros. That atmosphere, whether they're cheering for you or booing you, it's amazing. Outside of NOLA, obviously, this might be my favorite place to play. I can't lie to you." So, again, it's a little bit of, like, tongue-in-cheek, right? Outside NOLA, he's putting up a little bit of a defense.
He's
but
obliged to say that so he doesn't get booed from here on out.
Right, and you know, it also might be a thing. He at this point in his career, you know, he's young. Younger players tend to, like, you know, gravitate a little more to the fan base and the organization that drafted them, unless their name is Porzingis. But we do know, I think, that Zion, you know, the fact that he would go out and say this, you know, in part it is, you know, an indication that, you know, he wants to be on that big stage, and I think most players want to be on a big stage, and Madison Square Garden is a huge stage. Even when the Knicks are sucking, as you can attest, when they're really bad, it's still going to be on prime time. It's still going to be shown. They're still going to be talking about Madison Square Garden and the Knicks. But I think also, though, it also comes to the fact that, you know, again, it's also one of those things where I think he can legitimately understand that playing in New York right now, like going into play in Madison Square Garden, is a big deal because he's watched people play there for decades or his entire life. And, you know, this is like, it's kind of like a story thing. So it also just might be him being like, man, this is just a dope place to play. I can't believe I'm playing at Madison Square Garden. So it's a big deal to him. But, you know, you think that he might be going to the Knicks eventually. We talked about this a little last week, but why do you say that, though, in general? Because I know these comments kind of indicated that a little bit, but in general, why do you think he's going to end up, whether it's 2-3 years down the road, as a New York Knick?
So number one is, if you would have watched the interview, I don't know if any of you have seen the interview. If you go and watch the interview, his face lit up when he was asked at Madison Square Garden. That's number one. Number two, his words were, "I'm glad you asked that," meaning he knew that question was coming. He knew the question was coming, and he was ready to answer it. Number three, and like now I'm going to get into the more specific stuff, is he has a relationship. I think he has a relationship with the agency that CAA, I think he's a part of CAA or something like that. The agency, the Worldwide West, the guy who's now the president of basketball operations for the New York Knicks. He has ties to the president of basketball operations with the New York Knicks. His best friend and college roommate, RJ Barrett, is pretty much, even though Julius Randle's balling out, the cornerstone of that franchise is RJ Barrett, who is his best friend, who, if you follow them back to college, I mean, there's a reason those two went to college together, which was to play with each other. And if you go back and you look at RJ's comments on draft night, one thing that was asked about RJ when it came to Zion, RJ responded and he said, I'm recruiting him. I'm already recruiting him to come here. So you have that relationship within the organization with basically the cornerstone of our franchise happens to be his best friend. And just given what's going on in New Orleans, how they're not winning. And if you look at Zion, you look at his face, he does not look happy. Like, it gets to a point where you're a Cavs fan, dude, and you remember, it gets to a point where a player just gets tired, as much as he might have an emotional tie to a place because he was drafted there, dude, a dude just gets tired of losing regardless.
I get that.
A dude just gets tired of losing, and you know it's already been made evident. New Orleans has made it very clear. Like, they had a youth movement down there. They got Lonzo. They've already made it clear. You know, Eric Bledsoe, he's getting up there. He's what, 31, 32. He's not part of their future.
Wow, Eric Bledsoe's only 31. I thought he was way older.
He drafted in 2010.
That's crazy.
20 at the time, so he's up there in age. He's not part of the New Orleans future. The only real part of New Orleans future that they really have right now, I mean, they have Jackson Hayes, who's like, you know, he's just a rim runner, and they have Brandon Ingram. They already made it clear. Lonzo, if a team offers Lonzo north of 18 mil, they're not matching. So they're pretty much gonna let Lonzo walk because there will be a market for Lonzo in the offseason. They're gonna let Lonzo walk. New York is probably gonna be in that sweepstakes. By the way, we're probably gonna get Lonzo. By the way, based on
do you want to pay Lonzo a max contract?
It's not up to me. It's up to Wes. And I think Wes would be willing to, just because we don't have a point guard. We need a point guard. Derrick Rose is not the point guard of the future. He's more or less a bridge to our next guy. And we already have Emmanuel Quickley, but I think Quickley is more of like a Lou Williams type where you bring him off the bench and he, you know, you could play him 25 minutes a game and he can give you, you know, 15 to 20 off the bench. So that's what I think about that. But with regards to Zion's long-term future in New Orleans, I don't see it. Remember, dude, this is an organization. They fumbled the bag on Chris Paul. He left. They fumbled the bag on Anthony Davis, and mind you, he carried them to the playoffs, but you could visibly see he wanted out. And you normally see this out of small market. You normally see this out of small markets where dudes, you know, they get tired of losing, and after a while, they just say, you know what, I'm going to go to a big market. And the reason why I think I could see Zion in New York in the future is just because the culture has changed. Tibbs has instilled more of like a blue collar culture. They're winning. We're on a 6-game winning streak right now. Probably going to make the playoffs. This is a team. This is the team that Vegas projected to win 22 games this year. Not only are they past that, but they're in contention not just for the play-in tournament, but to potentially make a run at the 5 or the 4 seed in the playoffs and potentially host a playoff series. That's the kind of job Tibbs has done. And it's only going to get better with the more talent they bring in. So that's where I could see Zion ultimately a couple of years from now, if things don't change in New Orleans, that's where I could see Zion picking up and going to a bigger market. And I think New York is the leader.
Yeah, I mean, so I get the argument, right? I get that, you know, that based off these comments, that also based off of, you know, your prior knowledge, right? That New York could be a destination for Zion down the line. But the argument that comes up, and I think it's a valid one, whenever we talk about, oh, who's going to go to the Knicks or who the Knicks going to get this free agency, is how they've been burned in free agency historically in the past 10, 15 years. Whether it was LeBron. Everyone was excited. Oh, my God, LeBron is going to come to the Knicks, and the Knicks said he's going to take over the Garden. He's going to run the show in New York. And he didn't. Then they had to settle, obviously, for Amari Stoudemire. Then you had the big one 2 off seasons ago with KD and Kyrie Irving snubbing the Knicks. Everyone thought KD was going to the Knicks, by the way. This was like, even people who hated the Knicks, this was a foregone conclusion to them that KD is going to the Knicks, and it's likely that Kyrie would be following him there. But that didn't happen. Instead, they both went to the crosstown rival and made the Brooklyn Nets hugely relevant again. So that, I think, was a big time mistake on behalf of the New York Knicks, and it's also a big blight on who they might be able to get down the line. Are they going to be able to get, you know, a top free agent? I don't think so. Like, it's going to be difficult because you've just seen this history of people being snubbed, and you have to look at why that is. It's because of bad management. It's because of the owner who has absolutely no respect for the Knicks players, who has no respect for, you know, the legacy of Knicks players. He has no respect for fans. He has very little respect for his front office and his coaching staff that seems to be fluctuating every 3 years. Andrew, at what point do you as a Knicks fan, you know, say that either Nolan has to go, or as like have you got to that point where you're just like he doesn't know what he's doing and he's bad for the franchise and he's one of the main reasons that people don't want to come to my team?
So I think that I used to think that in the past, but as I'm looking at this new regime and I'm looking at the way they're running things, this regime is different from previous regimes, and this coaching staff is different than previous coaching staff. One thing that I don't think many people know was, I think Tom Thibodeau, don't quote me on this, I think Tom Thibodeau was an assistant coach when the New York Knicks made the 1999 NBA Finals. So he was on that last team, like when New York was a grit and grind, when they became the first number 8 seed to ever make the NBA Finals. By the way, I don't know, the only other one was Orlando in 2009, I think. So they were the first 8 seed to ever make the NBA Finals. It was a gritty team, and Tibbs has brought that back to New York. This team plays defense. They play hard. And if you watch them play, everybody even admits that team is going to be a tough out. Nobody wants to see that team in the playoffs because they're going to be in the playoffs. That's a playoff team. Do I think they're going to win? You know, they could potentially win a series. I don't see them going that far, though, but we don't know. I mean, this whole season has been lightning in a bottle, so we don't know how far they can go. But with regards to the culture and everything, and Dolan's really been hands off. He's really just been letting Worldwide Wes and Leon Rose, those guys more or less run the show, and Scott Perry. He's more or less been letting those guys bring in their guys and he's been letting Tibbs do his job. He's been hands off. I mean, think about it, dude. Outside of the Patrick Ewing debacle, where a couple security guards didn't know who Ewing was at the Big East tournament, you really haven't heard much. And the fact that that's what I'm saying, man, you really haven't heard much about Dolan in recent times. So let me get on you about a point you made earlier.
Okay.
So
get on me.
So first, we did strike out on LeBron, but we struck out on LeBron because we were missing the key piece, which was we needed like the 1A, the 1B type. We needed the guy with the relationship to LeBron. That's D Wade. That was D Wade from Miami. That's why he was able to go there. Mm-hmm. We have that for Zion and RJ. We have that. We as long as we keep RJ happy and RJ, he doesn't ask out, we already have like the D Wade to the LeBron when it comes to RJ and Zion. Now with the Kevin Durant thing, was more of he got injured and the Knicks were coming off historically one of the worst seasons. I think they came out actually historically the worst season in franchise history. So the Knicks had no direction.
That's saying something.
I mean, they had no direction at the time. I think Fizdale was still the coach. That team, no free agents were going to that team. They were not going to bring in any big free agents. As much as people, speculated about, we could bring in some big time free agents. That team wasn't going to bring any free agents. They did strike out. And listen, Brooklyn already had a foundation. They had a solid coach in Kenny Atkinson, who they let go to bring in Steve Nash, and that team made the playoffs. That was a playoff team before they bought in KD and Kyrie, and then they bought in Harden. So they laid the foundation, and New York is kind of doing the same thing, which laying the foundation of we get into the playoffs, we show these stars that, we can get there with less. And that's going to entice the big time free agents down the road to kind of say, you know what, if they can do that with less, imagine what they can do with me. So
that's fair. I mean, we'll see what happens with that. We'll be talking more NBA in just a little bit. We're going to be talking about Kobe Bryant's Hall of Fame induction at the end of the show. So stick around for that if you want to hear more about that. But before we get to any of that, Andrew, I think it's important for us to discuss baseball. Andrew, I know you're excited to talk about this, and I know there's a lot of people out there who might not agree with you. But let's get into it. So, after 5 straight losses, the Yankees have finished this weekend with an AL worst 5-10 record, which is their worst start since the 1997 season. But Andrew, it gets worse for the Knicks because they also have historically bad stats to go along with that. Let's take a look at this tweet from Katie Sharp, who went through some analytics. It's like they have a 210 They have a 210 batting average, lowest through 15 games since 1968. They have other low stats like slugging, lowest in 15 games since 1989. It's just a bad start to the season for the New York Yankees, and there was so much potential. There was so much talk about they got Garrett Cole, the big free agent signing. Things are gonna be even better in New York than they were last season, and now we're seeing them slip a little bit. We're seeing them lose series. We're seeing them lose games. They are 5 games under 500 right now, which for them is an unusual place to be, especially early to begin the season. So, Andrew, tell me, what do you think is wrong with the New York Yankees?
So there's a bunch of things wrong. Number one, they have. It's no secret the Yankees have the highest payroll in baseball, and they are paying these guys. The Yankees live and die by the home run ball, and frankly, they are not hitting. They are not hitting. What do they have? I think of the starting 9, they have either 7. Might be 6 or 7 of them are batting under 200. You're not getting run production out of that. You're not getting run production. Basically, they're not getting run production out of anybody. Stanton's not hitting. Hicks isn't hitting. Judge isn't hitting. None of these guys are hitting. So when you're a team where the entirety of your, the way you play is predicated on the home run ball, and you're not hitting, not just hitting the home run, but you're not hitting in general. That's not a recipe for success. It also doesn't help when, you go out and you pay this pitching staff and Anybody not named Garrett Cole has an ERA of what, above 6. That, so when you're not hitting and you're pitching, all your pitchers what have an ERA of above 6. Of course, I'm surprised their record isn't worse. By the way, given what I just told you,
Really?
I'm surprised their record isn't worse. By the way, because they are not. This is bad. Like, this is not. Now, the Yankees obviously had time to turn it around. It is the first month of the year, so don't let a slow start fool you, because I've seen teams, Milwaukee. There's been Milwaukee Brewers teams that have started 40 and 12 and missed the playoffs. So I wouldn't let a slow start, kind of, it's not a sinking ship yet, but there are some problems that the Yankees have to fix. The pitching has just not been there. This is a team that was expected to hit, and they're just not hitting. And I don't know when they're going to start hitting, because, they don't have. I hate to make like the Mets analogy, but even though they do have Garrett Cole, who he's a stud, they don't have like the Mets have. We got Stroman as our day 2. We have Syndergaard, who is arguably one of the most talented pitchers in baseball. We're going to have him coming back in August. We got David Peterson. We got dudes. So all with low ERAs, all that get outs, all that limit runs. So they don't have something like that where if they don't hit, at least their pitching can make up for it. They haven't had that. And don't get me started on their defense. If anyone has watched the Yankees, dude, their defense, bottom 5 in the league. I mean, and it's funny because they just made a trade to bring in this guy Odor. So not only were they not hitting, and he's not hitting, they bought him in because he did have a couple 30 home run seasons a few years back. So they're hoping in a smaller ballpark they might get that kind of production out of him. He's not hitting, but he's a downgrade defensively. And, I think the Yankees, they're going to right the ship eventually. They will right the ship, might turn it around, make the playoffs or something like that. But just how weak they are defensively, and with the way they go cold like this, I don't see them really going that far. And it also doesn't help when, Tampa Bay has their number. Put it this way. We were talking about this before the show, dude. Tampa Bay has a payroll of $60 million. The Yankees have a payroll of over $250 million. So their payroll is 4 times what Tampa Bay's is, and every team uses analytics. What is so much better about Tampa Bay's analytics that they are able to put a better team on the field after they let some studs in the offseason walk, by the way, because they didn't bring back Blake Snell. They let guys walk in the offseason, and yet I'm not saying they're just as good as the team that went to the World Series, because, mind you, they have guys, and Tampa Bay has guys that are hurt too, by the way. But I don't know what the excuse is for the Yankees. When you're spending that much money and the team that's owning you, has 1/4 of your payroll, that's a problem that has to be addressed sooner rather than later if the Yankees want to turn the season around.
I mean, yeah, like you said, like they're just not getting, like, at the end of the day, they're just not getting the bang for their buck that they're used to. Usually we see the Yankees spend all this money in free agency building these super teams, and they at least are above 500, or they're one of the best teams in the major leagues. But seeing the opposite of that, and eventually this kind of stuff catches up to you, right? Eventually this overspending, it's not sustainable, because at some point your bets are going to go bad, and you're going to put together a team that might be good on paper but doesn't have the chemistry, doesn't have it all together at the same time. And you kind of need that, especially defensively, like you said in baseball. But but we've seen like teams recover from this. Like again, it's only 15 games in. 5-10 is not something you can't recover from. Hell, the Nats, I think we started 19-31 with the year we won the World Series. So there's room. There's room for them to.
Like I said before, dude, I've seen Milwaukee teams start fucking 40-12 and not make the playoffs. So
yeah. So it's very possible that they still make the play. It's actually likely, I think, they still make the playoffs. But these early woes, they could be an indication that the Yankees are weaker than people thought. And I think you laid it out honestly perfectly. But what can they do to get things back on track? And can they actually get things back on track fairly soon?
They got to hit. That's more or less what it is. They got to hit. I mean, they got all these big names. They got to hit. That's more or less what it is, dude. You look up and down that lineup, they have a bunch of 25, 30 home run guys up and down that lineup that just went out and bought an Odor, who is another potential 30 home run guy. If your defense is going to struggle, which their defense is very bad, they've lost games on bad errors, and your pitching is not going to be there outside of Garrett Cole. If your pitching is just not going to be there, you got to outscore the other team, and they're not doing that right now. They're just not doing that. So they got to hit. I mean, I think it's early in the season. It's still cold. I think once the weather warms up, maybe the hitters will start. They'll warm up and they'll start hitting. But until then, I don't really know any. I don't know if they can make any moves, by the way, just because I don't know who they could bring in that could fix this, because they've got Aaron Judge, Stanton, like they've got the big name dudes that are eventually going to hit. It's just when. That's the question. When?
Yep. And I think we laid this out last week, right? The formula, the real take formula for winning in baseball. Pitching plus hitting equals winning. It's very simple.
That's it. If you're gonna win the World Series, you gotta keep the other team from. It's a very simple formula. Just keep the other team from scoring, and you score as much as you. That's the way to win.
It's the way to win. It's the way to get things done, and we love to get things done here. Andrew, before we move on to our next topic, which is we're going to be talking about Tom Brady and if the Bucs can repeat, I have some news, big announcement here from Real Take Sports. Big announcement coming up. I know I tweeted about this earlier, so let's break it right now, Andrew. Real Take Sports Talk is going to be having some live draft coverage on draft night. That's April 29th, 2021, 7 p.m. It's going to be our start time. We're going to be going through the entire first round that Thursday night. We're going to be talking about Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, everybody, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, all of these guys in the draft. We're going to be reacting to each one of these draft picks live. You're going to get to see Andrew's face whenever the Tennessee Titans draft a player from Clemson that he doesn't like. You're going to see my reaction.
Do that. We learned from Kevin Dodd. We don't draft Clemson players.
When the Ravens don't trade up to get a number one wide receiver. But again, draft night, live coverage of the NFL draft right here from your boys at Real Take Sports. We're going to be here. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Real Take Sports. Make sure you hit that notification bell, subscribe as well. We got a bunch of daily videos coming up every single day. I'm going crazy with the editing, but I do it for the fans. I do it for you. Real Take Wrestle Talk. I just threw my pen up in the air. That happens, baby. Real Take Wrestle Talk. Going to be live tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to check that out. Going to be talking about a lot of stuff, including that Jake Paul Extend fight. A lot of stuff coming out from that fight. Jake Paul was not looking good. We'll talk about that tomorrow at Real Take Wrestle Talk, WWE news, AEW, all that stuff. Also, next week, be sure to tune in next Monday night, our live NFL draft preview special. We're going to be talking about all the teams, all the picks. It's going to be strictly NFL draft unless there's some huge breaking news in the NBA or MLB that we probably want to talk about. Doubt there will be anything bigger than the NFL draft next week, though, Andrew. I really doubt it. But we're excited for that. Also, draft night, I think Andrew's going to be joining me. We also might see the return of one Johnny Gonzalez on draft night. So
cry about whoever the Giants draft.
A lot of stuff going on and here on Real Take Sports. Again, as always, remember to like, share, and subscribe. All right, so Andrew, we got some fun stuff to talk about now. Let's talk about before we get to that, let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Andrew, have seen better days. Actually, no, they've not seen better days. They are seeing better days than they have in the past. So their news came out this week that Tom Brady, Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady, is feeling great after having offseason knee surgery to repair some wear and tear on his knee. He should be ready, by the way, before the start of training camp, so it's not something that's going to keep him sidelined or anything. And he looks like he's gearing up for a potential run here. So Tom Brady is back. Tom Brady's feeling good, confident, right off a Super Bowl MVP. It seems like he's having the most fun he's had in years. Also, on top of that, they returned all 22 starters from the Super Bowl team, which I think has not happened since the 1970s. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're gearing up. They're ready to repeat. They're ready to defend their title. And I think this is a team that could repeat as champions. But it's always that wear and tear is always a factor. Are they, after a long season, especially a COVID prolonged season, is that wear and tear going to catch up to them? What do we think? Can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers repeat as Super Bowl champions?
I see them getting to the Super Bowl, absolutely, and I will tell you why. Their road to the Super Bowl this year, especially coming out of the NFC, I think will be easier than their road to the Super Bowl last season. I will tell you why. Green Bay has done nothing to help Aaron Rodgers. They have done absolutely nothing to bolster that team and give Aaron Rodgers what he needs. That's just one. Number two, the team he played before that, their franchise quarterback, gone. Jameis Winston, we don't know what he is. Taysom Hill, we don't know. We were talking about Teddy Bridgewater potentially going there. They got a lot of questions in New Orleans. There's that. The entire, not to mention, the entire NFC North. That's a shit show. We don't know what's going on up there. The Giants. Eli's not walking through those doors. So as much as people want to say Danny Dimes, he is Eli, they're going to give him, some weapons, probably more weapons than Eli ever had. The fact of the matter is, he's not Eli. So he can't beat Brady. And then, there is the NFC West, which I just don't see. I think San Francisco is going to get better, which we're going to talk about San Francisco in a minute. San Francisco, I don't really see how they could really, return to that form when they went to the Super Bowl. Arizona, Kyler Murray's young. I mean, people are going to say this could be a make or break for Kyler Murray. I don't see Arizona. I could see Arizona potentially getting to the playoffs, but I mean, dude, this Tampa Bay team, the way they dominated the quote unquote unstoppable offense of Kansas City, the way they dominated, I don't see them having any trouble shutting down a Kyler Murray. I don't. I think his path to the Super Bowl this year will actually be easier. And actually on the flip side too, I think Kansas City's path to the Super Bowl might be more difficult than it was because the AFC is going to get significantly better. You have the entire AFC North they're gearing up. You got the AFC East with I think New England's going to be back this year. They're going to have guys coming back. They're going to figure it out with Cam in the system. Josh Allen, he's out for blood. And
the Dolphins went 10-6 last year.
The Dolphins went 10-6, and they will get better. They will get better in this draft. They will get better. His road, Mahomes' road is a lot harder than Tom's. I can see Tom repeating. I actually don't. I don't see Tom playing the same team he played in the Super Bowl this year. I don't know who's coming out of the AFC, but I think Tampa Bay is coming out of the NFC. The jury was still out before they got there. I mean, we sat there all season last season talking about I don't know. Remember, I picked them to lose every week until they got to the Super Bowl. So I can't bet against them. I can't. The way I saw that defense dominate the quote unquote unstoppable Kansas City offense, I can't bet against them.
Yeah, so for me, it's a very simple thing. They have the confidence, they have the personnel coming back, and they have the experience. Those are three very dangerous things when they're all put together. And especially, you don't see many teams bringing all their starters back from the Super Bowl. That almost literally never happens. Plus, whoever they pick in the draft, and with Tom Brady's input, they're probably going to pick someone very good. And Brady has a thing about him. He knows how to build. He knows how to make people around him better, and that's what he's done historically. And that team's just going to be better. And the thing is, these players not only are they confident, they are selfless. In that you got people like Mike Evans, who's been there for a while, went through a lot of terrible seasons in Tampa Bay, had one of the best, most underrated wide receivers in the league, I believe, and he said, "I will take a pay cut. I will take a pay cut to keep this team together." And you saw a lot of players do that. A lot of players, even Tom Brady, restructured his contract to take a pay cut. Ndamukong Suh, all of these guys, they took pay cuts. They restructured their deals so that the team could be together so they could make another run in the title. Because that's what it's about. And this is a team that understands it. This is a team that understands what it takes to win a title, and they want it. They want it. That's the biggest thing. They want it, and they showed it with their moves in the offseason. And like I said, it's all a dangerous combination. Now, I did want to talk to you about Tom Brady specifically. So, we heard for years from people like Max Kellerman on ESPN. We heard for years from various pundits and experts that Tom Brady was going to fall off a cliff eventually. That eventually Father Time catches up with everyone. It caught up with Peyton Manning, caught up with Brett Favre, to an extent caught up with Drew Brees. Also, that although that is a little debatable, but all these quarterbacks, all these players, eventually Father Time catches up to you, which is understandable. Your body breaks down after a while, But the argument was made that Tom Brady, he was already on this nosedive. He was already on this cliff. He was falling off already in his last few years in New England. Although when you look at the stats, it showed you the opposite. When you look at him playing, yeah, he didn't have a lot of pieces around him, so the offense wasn't, the 2008 Patriots, but he was still pretty damn good. Won an MVP in 2016, by the way. But you have all this stuff happening, and then, wait. All this stuff is happening to disprove this point, and what? These people just kept on saying, oh, he's falling off a cliff. He's going to fall off a cliff. Goes to another team, and he wins. And then you got people like Kellerman making up excuses like, oh, well, he has more talent in Tampa Bay, so he's his stats are inflated. He's actually really bad, until they had to admit. All those years they were saying Tom Brady was falling off a cliff was bullshit. Even Max Kellerman, when they won the Super Bowl, admitted. He was like, yeah, I was cap. It was cap the whole time. So I think, can we please put to bed this idea that Tom Brady has fallen off a cliff? He might one day. He probably will one day. Everyone does, right? But can we put to bed this idea that he's already fallen off a cliff? Because I don't think at any point in his career did he fall off a cliff. Again, could he one day? Sure. But it's not. It hasn't happened yet. Can we put to bed this idea that Tom Brady is digressing as a quarterback?
We absolutely should. I mean, anyone who watched the Super Bowl saw that did not look to me like a quarterback who had fallen off a cliff or is falling off a cliff. That did not look to me at all. And you know what? Part of the reason why is, and a lot of these people don't want to accept it, was as much as the game is changing to everyone wants the mobile quarterback who runs the 4-3, runs the 4-4, runs the 4-5, and can sling it 80 yards. The fact of the matter is that Tom Brady might be the smartest football player on the field at all times, very high IQ. And even though he's not mobile as a pocket passer, he knows, you ever watch him play, he knows when to take the sack. He knows when to throw it away. He knows, he knows what decision to make at all times, and very high IQ guy. And that IQ is not going anywhere. And until he physically cannot bring his arm back to throw that ball, he's going to have success. That's all there is to it. That's really all there is to it. Keeps himself in a really good shape every year. Probably spends a shit ton of money on his body the same way LeBron does to stay in shape and stay in playing shape. So, I mean, literally until his body won't let him anymore, you're going to see this Brady, and people are just going to have to accept it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was always bullshit from the beginning. Tom Brady had never in his career fallen off a cliff. And for people to say that and then, point to these random statistics that I pulled off the internet out of context and whatnot. Yeah. Cap. Watch the games. At the end of the day, you want to find out if someone's fallen off a cliff? It's very evident. In 2015, you didn't have to look at stats to know that Peyton Manning fell off a cliff. Just watch a Bronco game. You knew that he was done. In 2010. Watch a Vikings game when Brett Favre was starting. You don't have to look at any stats. Watch the game. You know that he's fallen off the cliff.
Even in 2011, man. In 2011, when I saw Chris Johnson, that was not the same dude who rushed for 2,002 years before. That was not the same dude, and it was very clear.
And you can say that about a lot of players. But the thing is, people want to be ahead of everything. That's why Max Kellerman for the past 6 seasons has been screaming, "Oh, cliff, 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 cliff." That's why I named him Cliff Kellerman. That's like this is exactly why they want to be right down the line, right? They want to be like, "Oh, I told you so." But the thing is, he was wrong.
They don't want to
For
retract it either.
They
They
don't
have
want
too
to
much
retract
pride to
it. Yep,
retract
they have
it.
way too much pride. They because they can't be wrong, Andrew. Here's the thing: we will come on here and be like, "Yo, Cap, we were wrong." If Gardner Minshew, like goes like if he sucks and he starts with the Bears, then I was wrong. I'll be like, okay, I was wrong. Wrong sports take.
How
But
many weeks did I come on here and say Brady's not winning this week just for him to go and win in the playoffs? I mean, damn. I picked against him in every game.
Exactly. So at this point, it's just one of those things where it's like, watch Tom Brady play, and you will know whether or not he's fallen off a cliff. You don't have to look at stats to know that someone falls off a cliff. You just have to watch the damn game. Sports are simple, guys. Remember, baseball, hitting plus pitching equals winning. In football, watch the damn game, and you'll know what's going on.
Right.
Not that difficult.
When a player, like in basketball, man, Jordan, even at the end, he could give you 50, but he's not going to jump from the foul line. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same dude that was jumping from the foul line 15 years before that. Like, eventually it happens. For Brady, it hasn't yet. So until it happens, and it'll be clear when it happens. It's not very clear right now.
Not at all. You know what is clear, though? The fact that if you're watching this at home, you should like, share, and subscribe for daily videos. You got Real Take Russell Talk, like I said, starting tomorrow with me and my boy Trevor Sutton. Trevor, who, by the way, put something in the chat when we were talking about the Yankees. We didn't get a chance to get to it, but let me read it out, Andrew. He said, when talking about the Yankees, he said, they have no pitching. The big names are always hurt. I can't tell you the last time there was a season that Judge or Stanton wasn't hurt. So obviously, Trevor feels very strongly about the Yankees and their woes, and I think he's right on. I think he's on point. What do you?
That's been the problem with Judge for the longest time. Is great player when he plays. He's going to hit the home runs. He did have the 50 home run season as a rookie, but that has been the problem for Judge. Staying healthy has been a huge problem for Judge, and the same thing with Stanton since he came over from Miami. It's staying healthy. The guys will give you 40-plus home runs when they're on the field. The problem is they're not on the field, and now an even bigger problem for the Yankees is they're not hitting. When you have a team of dudes, when the majority of your team is hitting under 200, you pulled up the team stat. The team stat was what? 210? That's the team batting average. The majority of that team is hitting under 200. Outside of Gio Urshela and he hasn't been hitting, but he's hitting better than most. And the other one was LeMahieu, who he's not hitting 360 like he was last year, but at least he's somewhat producing. I mean, those other guys have got to step up. That's the problem with the Yankees, dude, is they're just expected to hit, and this group is just not hitting.
Right. All right, Andrew, let's talk about the NFL draft. We're going to talk, again, we're going to have our full draft preview next week, but there's a few quarterbacks that I think have been in the news that we need to address, and it's actually, believe it or not, something you and I agree on about college football. So let's talk about this. Recent reports have shown that Alabama quarterback Mac Jones is the odds-on favorite to be the number 3 overall pick for San Francisco. San Francisco obviously traded up. They traded a few first-round picks to Miami to get up to that number 3 spot. You don't do that. I think they've been very transparent about that you don't do that unless you're going to pick a quarterback. Lynch and Shanahan have both indicated that's the direction they're going to go. Now it's just a matter of who, and a lot of people expect Zach Wilson to be off the board at number 2. And we will talk about that next week and about Zach Wilson, because I think he's a very interesting case. But Mac Jones is slated to be picked at number 3. And a lot of people think that might be a little overrated, considering you have other people like Trey Lance and Justin Fields. And if you look at Mac Jones and what he had around him at Alabama, he wasn't playing with scrubs. So what do you think about just Mac Jones? We'll get to Justin Fields in another segment, but Mac Jones, is he overrated? Should he be the 3rd quarterback off the board? Is he potentially, a bust in the making, or is he the real deal?
So I don't hate Mac Jones. I have a lot of respect for Mac Jones. He waited his turn, sat behind Jalen Hurts and Tua. He waited his turn and everything like that. But third quarterback off the board, going what, third or fourth overall to San Francisco? No, absolutely. Dude. I don't know if you remember, but what has been the biggest like knock on Alabama in the last 12 to 14 years has been
They don't develop quarterbacks.
They don't develop quarterbacks. Part of the reason why it didn't matter all the time, let's take AJ McCarron, for example. How many college games did AJ McCarron win? And he was starting as a damn freshman. He played 4 years there. How many games did AJ McCarron win? But, you know, and AJ McCarron looked so great in college. And you know what? You are going to look great in college when you're throwing to fucking Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, who was the other one? And Amari Cooper. It's the same. I literally see AJ McCarron 2.0 and Mac Jones. Listen, it's not a knock on him. It's just we've seen this before. It's just when you have an abundance of talent like that, he's probably a very high IQ player. He's probably a really hardworking guy. But to go third overall, I mean, we've seen this before, dude. I mean, AJ McCarron failed in the end. I'm not gonna say failed because he's gone from roster to roster. He might still be in the league, but
well, he got beat up by Nathan Peterman in Oakland, so
okay, so
he failed. He failed.
But just, you know, I think part of the problem with Mac Jones is that we don't know too much about his overall ability, and it's because look at who he was playing with. Like, he's always gonna have an elite defense. He was throwing to the Heisman winner. His running back is probably going to be the first running back off the board. Like, the other dude, people were even saying mind you, he was throwing to the Heisman winner, and people were saying Jalen Waddle, who might get drafted before the guy who won the Heisman. Like, that's who he was throwing to. He was throwing to just surefire first-round talent guys. So we don't really know a lot about Mac Jones. I am going to say he's overrated, though. To go at that spot, especially ahead of a guy like Justin Fields, who, if anybody watched the college football playoff, what Justin Fields did to Clemson, I think it would be ludicrous to have Justin Fields go. Mac Jones before Justin Fields? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
He's totally overrated. There's not really an argument to be made about, okay, does he have an upside? Yeah. A lot of quarterbacks have upsides. I think Mac Jones, of course he has an upside. But when you're looking at talent, when you're evaluating talent, you're watching the games, what did we notice from Mac Jones in his time at Alabama? Well, you know that he had two great wide receivers in Jalen Waddle and Smith. One of them, like you said, was a Heisman Trophy winner. He had a tendency, though, to lock on to those guys. He had a tendency to not go through his progressions, which in the NFL, as a young quarterback especially, you have to do. You have to be able to go through your progressions and be disciplined. And he showed that he wasn't able to do that. He showed very slow release times. It's a weird release, man. Like I know a lot of people. He's probably worked on that in recent weeks, and hopefully he's gotten better at it. But you have to be able to get rid of the ball quick, and you have to be able to make quick decisions and stay disciplined. Nice Fiji water, and he doesn't really play also with a lot of poise all the time. You've seen times where he's gotten rattled when he's forced to go out of the pocket. It doesn't look good, man. It really does not look good. So you have all of that, plus he was masked, man. He was masked with tremendous talent in both wide receivers, and then you said Najee Harris, who I think might be one of the best offensive players in the draft.
He'll be the first running back off the board. He will be the first running back off the board.
Oh, yeah, totally. So you have all of that, plus that stout Alabama defense. So he's put in a position where the offense is going to be efficient, and he probably doesn't, and the defense is going to take care of business.
He's very rarely playing from behind.
He was rarely ever playing from behind, and a lot of the times when you saw those big plays from Alabama, they didn't come because of something he specifically did. It was either an amazing catch by one of the receivers or Najee Harris doing something crazy. It wasn't on him. He wasn't the guy. And I'm not, again, this is not, shitting on Mac Jones. I still think he's worth probably a first round pick. I think he's probably more of a second round value, but he's a quarterback, so it's automatically boosted up, which is fine. But I think if you're evaluating talent and who has the most talent, it is ludicrous to take him above Justin Fields. It is ludicrous to take him above Trey Lance. And, there's talk that potentially the Jets might have been looking at him instead of Wilson. It would be ludicrous for him to go above Zach Wilson. So it's just, again, it might just be a fit thing. If it's a fit thing and that's who the San Francisco 49ers want, that's a whole nother deal. In that case, though, why do you trade up to number 3? Like, because is it because you think someone else is going to get him? Is it because you think someone else is going to trade up? I don't know. I don't like it. That's my other thing. What I see with Mac Jones in San Francisco, especially, he's gonna be no different than Jimmy G. Gonna be at his best. He's gonna be no different than Jimmy G, and that's not a knock on Jimmy G or even a knock on Mac Jones. It's just what I think to be true. He's going to be a quality game managing quarterback at his best. And again, we mentioned this the Alex Smith segment. That's okay. But if they genuinely want to get better, if they want to be able to get over that hump because they were in the Super Bowl last year or 2 years ago, is this the guy who you think you're going to be able to build around for 10 years? Is he going to be the next franchise quarterback to replace Jimmy G, who's already in the offense and he does okay? He's injury prone. That's a different argument, but I don't think he's going to be that much different. If they really want to make a splash, you take Justin Fields. If you want to throw a curveball, even trade Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has a tremendous upside. I think possibly the biggest upside of any quarterback in this draft. But we'll get into that later. But again, he's just I don't see it. Again, I'm not a talent scout, but I just don't see it. To me, he has at best game manager or AJ McCarron written all over him.
I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much that's what I see. I mean, it's not a knock on the kid. Won a national championship, set a record, set records in college and everything like that. But it's just, like you said, man, he tends to lock on to receivers, and dude, it's very easy when all you're doing is throwing the long ball to a wideout who can beat his man from the line of scrimmage every time. It's very easy if you're just going to throw the long ball to that dude, and he's going to create so much separation that you can lock onto him. Like they could know that you're gonna single him out, and still, because he's just that talented and that fast, that he's still gonna beat it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, again, it's just might be wrong. If I am in like 5 years, let me know. But I don't see it with Mac Jones. And that's just me being honest, in my opinion. But moving on, Andrew, another quarterback that's been in the news lately for the wrong reasons, Justin Fields. So, Andrew, Justin Fields, to you and I, as soon as, I think we were talking about this in January, we had him as at least the second best quarterback in the draft.
I had him as 1, but...
You had him as 1, but I'm saying at least. Building a bridge here, buddy. Building a bridge.
Yes.
Meet me halfway. But as Mac Jones rises to the top of someone's draft charts, just as soon as a few months ago, Justin Fields was either number 1 or number 2, depending on who you ask. But he's fallen down. Justin Fields has fell down a lot of draft charts. He's fell down as from the number 2 prospect in many people to the 3rd or 4th best quarterback prospect in this draft, which a lot of people are saying is ludicrous. So, Andrew, we understand, this phenomenon has happened, but why? Why is Justin Fields suddenly, falling down these draft boards? Is he being overlooked? What's going on?
I think he's being overlooked. I think part of the issue was this never made any sense to me, first off. The fact that when they were playing football, the games were going on. They were playing every week, national primetime games. Everyone was so high on him. He was so great and everything like that. Then they stopped playing football for 3 months, and he just starts dropping and dropping and dropping. And the dudes that are jumping him, I mean, outside of Mac Jones, who beat him head-to-head in the national championship, but we just talked about him. The dudes that are jumping him, like Zach Wilson didn't play nearly the caliber of competition, nor in, the kind of bowl that he played against. Like, Zach Wilson didn't play against Alabama's defense. Zach Wilson didn't play against Clemson's defense. He didn't play against the Northwestern defense in the big... Like, Zach Wilson didn't play against that caliber of competition. So why was Zach Wilson jumping him? I think as people go back and they look at the film, Maybe there were just certain things they didn't like when they start nitpicking at a player. Maybe they didn't like something where they don't like his arm action. Maybe they don't like, when he drops back and throws. They don't like how, he might like. I don't know if you saw. I used to see this a lot with Mariota in Tennessee. This could have just been a scheme thing, but he would almost like go through his read too slow and then end up either missing a receiver or be forced to run. So, I mean, there just could be things on film they don't like about Justin Fields. I don't think he should have dropped, though. I think if he, it just seems like the Jets are so dead set on Zach Wilson, which, by the way, just for you Jets fans, I know they're like in love with Zach Wilson and they saw his pro day and they saw he was making these throws on the run and everything like that. He was making, the throws and everything like that. I'm just going to let you know right now. Okay. Sam Darnold made those throws in the game. He made those exact same throws in the game against actual defenses. Zach Wilson was making those throws against air. He didn't have a defensive end running him down. His guy was not being trailed by a corner. Like Sam Darnold made those throws in NFL games. So just anyone who's
Right,
thinking that,
but with Zach Wilson, I think for the Jets, it kind of comes down to he's a very similar prospect to Darnold, but he's cheaper. And
maybe
is
they'll get
Darnold
it
the
right
guy?
too.
And is Darnold the guy you want to pay $25-30 million a year to?
That I
Probably
think is
not.
the problem with the Jets.
Yeah.
Trust me, you're not going to see much of a difference. I mean, honestly, I think Sam Darnold might be more of a talent than Zach Wilson, but we will see.
Yeah.
But with the Justin Fields thing, dude, I just think, there's some things going in. Like, Ohio State hasn't had the best track record as a quarterback. That's number one. On top of that, when you go back and you watch his film, maybe there were some things people didn't like about his film and everything like that. But, and maybe at his pro day, people saw his pro day and maybe his pro day didn't impress anything like that, which the pro day I think is the dumbest thing ever. If you go back and you watch the game film and you see how the guy did on the field against actual competition, that gives you an indication, and mind you, he was not playing with world beaters out there either. Like we mentioned, he didn't have, world beater outside of Chris Olave, who was his like wide receiver one. He wasn't throwing to Devontae Smith. He wasn't throwing to Jamar Chase. He wasn't throwing to guys like that. So,
yeah, I mean, look, with Justin Fields, it comes down to two things, I think. One, I think it's people have kind of fallen in love with these other quarterbacks that you haven't heard so much about, and I think they're probably overthinking it. They're like, oh man, like they're trying to make the smart move, like people moving up to get Mac Jones or to get Pat Mahomes a few years ago, like the Chiefs did, or Deshaun Watson or someone like that, right? They're trying to be like that team, or the Ravens when they trade up to get Lamar Jackson. They're trying to, I think, be a little too smart about it. It's very easy. It's about fundamentals. Justin Fields has solid fundamentals, quick release. He's got the arm. He's got the ability to elude the rush, got the ability to extend plays, got the ability to go through his progressions. We've seen that at Ohio State. What's there not to like? The truth is, there's not much that he does bad. Does he throw some errant passes? Yeah, he has a tendency to do that sometimes, but that's something you can work on. I think part of it is them overthinking it.
Yeah.
And
it's
then
it was the same thing with let me chime in for a second.
Go ahead.
This is why Chicago failed with Mitch Trubisky, by the way. They failed with Mitch Trubisky because when they passed on guys like Mahomes, when they passed, I don't know, wait, was Trubisky? He wasn't in the same draft as Mahomes. Which draft was he? Wait, I forgot was that the 2017 draft? Just the thing with Trubisky, and this is why.
Oh, yeah, they were the same draft. They were the same draft.
The reason why that situation failed was because you saw Mahomes had the intangibles. You saw Mahomes had, he was a physical specimen. He had the arm, and same with Josh Allen. Physical specimen, had the arm and everything like that. The problem that a lot of these people that they fall in love with was when they look at a player and they look at there's not that many negatives, and maybe there aren't that many negatives with a guy like Zach Wilson, they kind of overtake the things that Justin Fields, a guy like Justin, or like, for example, like we were just debating with the whole Mac Jones, maybe he doesn't have that many negatives or something like that, but his positives are not Justin Fields positives, which is the arm strength, the speed, just the he's a physical specimen, the 6'4", his ability to take a big hit and still keep moving or something like that. So
The other thing, though, that I think plays into this, and I'm not saying it's willful ignorance, but I do think it's something we should talk about, and that's the fact that Justin Fields is a black quarterback, and the NFL historically, GMs, they historically, a lot of times they don't see black quarterbacks as being as smart, even though Justin Fields. He's arguably the smartest quarterback. The dude basically has a photogenic memory. He does well in his classes. I think I don't know what his Wonderlics are going to be. I don't even know if they do that, but he's probably going to be towards the top. And and the reason I bring that up is because there was this bullshit report that came out, a few weeks ago. And I'm not blaming Dan Orlovsky because he heard it from somebody, but Orlovsky went on the Pat McAfee show and he said that there were people in the NFL who said that Justin Fields, he's got a bad work ethic, that he's lazy. He's kind of like a last guy in, first guy out kind of guy. And that he's not a leader. He wasn't with the team. And basically everyone from Ohio State's come out and said that is a total lie. That's not true. Justin Fields has a great work ethic. Justin Fields is actually the reason that Ohio State team was in the national championship picture. He actually led that team. So we know that's BS. And I do think that there, to an extent, and again, I don't think this is willful. I think this is more just them believe just them having this weird notion in their head, because people had similar notions about Lamar Jackson, because people saw Lamar Jackson as, oh man, he should be a wide receiver. Why? He's a fast quarterback. He's black, and we don't know if he can
get the 6'4" frame and everything.
Yeah, and it's weird because that's what these people automatically go to. People like Bill Polian, that's what they automatically go to. Oh, he's going to be a great wide receiver, but he can't be a quarterback. But Lamar Jackson, 2 years later, what does he do? He wins the MVP. So again, it's this weird thing of I think this bias that still exists, and I'm glad it's going away as we see more African Americans, more minorities in the NFL. We Pat Mahomes succeeding, Lamar Jackson's doing great, Russell Wilson. You have all these people who are doing amazing, but we still have this weird notion from GMs, this weird feeling, I guess, from GMs who I don't know what it is, man. Because it'd be one thing, right, if it was just one case over time. This is something we've seen a pattern of black quarterbacks being overlooked. And I think that there is, to an extent, that does play into why Justin Fields has fallen down some draft boards. I truly believe that. And I think there's a lot of evidence to kind of back that up, especially when you bring in the Orlovsky story that came up.
I just thought of something.
Yeah. You all right, Andrew?
Yeah, with Dan Orlovsky. I just thought about something with Dan Orlovsky. But Dan Orlovsky was the quarterback of the 0-16 team. Anyway.
Oh, he was a quarterback who ran out of his own end zone for a safety.
Yeah. Dan Orlovsky. Great guy. I'm sure.
Great guy. He's fun to watch on TV, but, and again, I don't blame him for saying that, right? Because he was just talking about stuff he heard from GM. So.
And listen, I find that funny too, was because people were making those claims about Justin Fields, and then what happens just a few days ago, which has been all over the media, is how Sunshine is making comments about how football isn't my life, how I don't have a chip on my shoulder. And I'm sitting up here and I was like, wow, imagine if Justin Fields would have said that. He would have fallen from a third or fourth quarterback off the board to a third or fourth rounder. Yeah.
He would have. Dude, he would have tanked, freaking tanked, like Dogecoin did the other day. Still recovering from that.
What are you talking about? I got in at 2 cents. Until that shit goes below a cent, I don't lose money.
Oh. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Justin Fields. Well, we'll see, man. We'll talk about Justin Fields and all those other quarterbacks at our live draft preview show next week. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to like this video if you haven't already. Helped out the algorithm. Share. Subscribe. If you haven't already, we've got daily videos coming out. Real Take Russell Talk tomorrow. A lot more stuff happening. Real Take Sports Talk every Monday. Andrew, let's talk about sticking to the NFL. Let's talk about Melvin Gordon. Do you want to talk about Melvin Gordon?
I I can't talk about this dude without laughing, just because his every time this dude's funny. Like every time I look up, Melvin Gordon is doing something, and I can't take this dude serious.
Yeah, it's very difficult to take him seriously. All right. So Melvin Gordon came out this week, and he had some very interesting words to say to a reporter. He is very upset about the way things have happened with the Chargers, and his holdout, and then not being able to get that big contract he wanted, and then eventually had to sign with the Broncos and had a weird season. But let's take a look at what he said. So he says, "I feel like I am so overlooked. Whatever that case may be, because we didn't get a lot of TV time with the Chargers and last year with splitting the ball and the fans not being there because of COVID. I don't know. But I get overlooked a lot, and I'm kind of sick of it." And he got some backlash about that.
Yeah.
Andrew, why don't you tell me? Does Gordon have a reason to be upset, or is he capping?
Okay. So I love Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon he was a Wisconsin Badger. He was a stud at Wisconsin. Um, you know what? Is this the same dude that was suspended for a while?
Yeah,
Is this
yeah.
the same?
He got suspended.
Yeah. No. I can't sympathize with this dude. It was a rhetorical question, by the way. I can't sympathize with this dude just because, like, you know what? If you didn't want to be overlooked, I don't think you shouldn't have been getting suspended that early in your career, to the point where, you were forced to sign with Denver out of necessity. Like, they signed you out of, like, necessity because that organization, John Elway, is running them into the ground. So you did it to yourself, dude. Like, I don't know what more to say. Like, you did it to yourself. You don't want to be overlooked. I don't know, have a Derrick Henry type season, rush for 1,600 yards, like, do something that will make people be like, oh yeah, there's that guy. Like, be the guy that you were coming out of Wisconsin. Be that guy.
You know what his problem is? I think so it's weird because his situation kind of turned out to be the opposite of what Le'Veon Bell's holdout was, right? Because Gordon held out, right? And I think he overestimated what he meant, not only to the Chargers, but what he would mean in free agency to other teams.
Yeah.
And when you're a running back, it's very difficult, very, very difficult to get, like, that large second contract. Like, Le'Veon Bell, it worked out for him. He sat out the entire year. Melvin Gordon ended up coming back, but it's just been downhill for him. And the thing was, when he came back with the Chargers, he was never able to get things back on track. He was never able to put up the same numbers. Austin Eckler had showed up on the scene at that point. At that point, Austin Eckler had taken over that Chargers offense because God knows the Chargers love a running back who can catch the damn ball. And that's what Eckler was doing. Melvin Gordon, not known as a pass-catching back, and I think he never really truly fit in that offense, if we're being real. But Melvin Gordon, he does he have a reason to be unhappy? I mean, look, I'd be unhappy too if I was a first round pick and and a few years later I made some bad decisions, and this is what I'm dealing with. And I'm dealing with a team. I'm not getting paid a lot of money or as much money as I probably should be. I overestimated my worth. I'm on a team that's being run into the ground, as you said, by John Elway. I'd be mad too. But does he have a reason to be angry about being overlooked? No, not at all.
He can control that, by the way, by performing. He can control that.
Look, and look, if it's one of those things, if he needs to say this to have a chip on his shoulder to motivate himself, that's fine. That's fine. But he needs to, at the end of the day, show the production. If he goes out there next year and he has another weak season, then it's going to be for nothing. Then it's not on people overlooking you. It's on you underperforming, and that's the brutal truth in any profession, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, whether you're behind a desk or you're in front of a laptop or a computer. At the end of the day, you're based on your performance and what you can provide to a team or your organization, your company, whatever. And recently, Melvin Gordon has not been providing too much, or he's not been providing something that they probably can't get cheaper elsewhere. And that's the truth. So, does he have a reason to be overlooked? Yeah, he should be overlooked. And honestly, I don't think he's being overlooked. I think he's just being looked at. I think he's being examined perfectly right. So, that's just it.
The talent's there. Listen, the talent's there.
Talent's
It's like
totally
with
there.
Jameis Winston, dude. The talent's there. It's just sometimes you got to perform. Like you gotta perform. That's all there is to it.
Yep, exactly. All right. Speaking of performing, you know who's done with performing? Julian Edelman. We broke the news last week right here on the air. Patriots wide receiver Julian Edelman announced this week that he has... Excuse me. Anyway, as we reported last week as we were going off the air, Patriots wide receiver Julian Edelman announced his retirement from football after failing a physical, then being released by the New England Patriots. He put out a video on the New England Patriots social media, thanking them and saying that, he's a Patriot for life. And this led to a lot of people online, a lot of Patriots fans, and a lot of saying that he is a Hall of Famer. Now, this started a very interesting conversation about his career because Julian Edelman has been there, done that a lot of times. He's been arguably the number one receiver for Tom Brady for a while now. He's been one of the most consistent receivers that Tom Brady's had throughout his career. And he's provided a lot to that organization. But a Hall of Famer, I think I can say, for myself at least, that's a bit of an overstatement on Julian Edelman. We'll get into that. But, Andrew, what do you think about this conversation? Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer?
I don't think he's not a, he might get in third or fourth ballot. Definitely not a first ballot. If Calvin Johnson's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, this guy, I don't give a fuck about switch this dude and Calvin Johnson, and you tell me if Calvin Johnson's a Hall of Famer. Absolutely, given the talent alone. But I just don't think this dude, he did have the postseason success. He did win a Super Bowl MVP. He was the lone offensive threat in the historically worst offensive Super Bowl ever, which was that 2019
Rams
Patriots Super Bowl. He was the lone offensive star in a Super Bowl where there was no offense. So, I mean, the body of work is there. It's just you put up his career numbers next to other dudes like, Chad Ochocinco. You put his numbers up next to other dudes that are like, that people are like campaigning to get them dudes in the Hall of Fame. I don't see it, dude. He does have the postseason success, but you got to understand too, he was playing with the best quarterback ever, and I think there's a lot of dudes who could have done what Julian Edelman. A lot of dudes who could have done what Julian Edelman did on that spot. He was just right place, right time. I don't think right place, right time is good enough to get you into the Hall of Fame. Like I said before, Calvin Johnson.
If it were, David Tyree would be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, exactly. You put anybody there, dude. Plaxico. Think about dudes that were more talented than Edelman that you could have swapped. Like, think about all the dudes you could have swapped out for Edelman. Then they would all. So I don't. So he might be a third or fourth ballot, but
here's what I will say. Personally, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He's definitely going to go in the Patriots Ring of Honor. He might be one of the best players the Patriots have ever had, and that's fine, and that can be true. But like you said, the numbers don't align. Especially compared to players of his generation, they don't align. Had he played maybe 4 or 5 more years, I think that would be a conversation. That would be an honest conversation. But unfortunately, he can't, and that's just the truth. He was never Calvin Johnson. He was never even Wes Welker, really. If we're being honest, at his best, you're taking Wes Welker over Julian Edelman. Again, all of this stuff is okay. Julian Edelman is still a name of this generation we're gonna remember. And all that, like he's going to be the Patriots Ring of Honor, as I said. He's they build a statue for him, mazel. If you're in New England, that's fine. But if you want to be in the Hall of Fame, you gotta be a prime time guy. That's just the truth. And I will say this though. If Ryan Fitzpatrick gets into the Hall of Fame, then I think someone like Julian Edelman can totally get it. If here's like, because there's been this weird campaign of like, oh, get Ryan Fitzpatrick in the Hall of Fame, and I think like it started out as a meme a little bit, and it kind of transcended into like something that became real. And I'm not saying that, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's had one of the most interesting stories of any quarterback ever. Just as he's like the ultimate journeyman. Like he's probably the best journeyman quarterback ever. And then you get into the conversation of, is being the best journeyman ever in the NFL worthy of being in the Hall of Fame? And it's a weird conversation to get into because at that point, where was Vinny Testaverde's Hall of Fame induction? There's been journeyman quarterbacks before and they haven't gotten in, and it's because if you want to be in the Hall of Fame, it's about the talent and the ability. And that's what it comes down to a lot of times, and the production on the field. You have to have all three to get in. And honestly, like for Julian Edelman, the production was fine. The talent was good, but it wasn't great. And, the ability when he was on the field, he was good. He was a very, very good slot receiver. But it's not enough to get you in the Hall of Fame. Much like Ryan Fitzpatrick, a very, very good veteran quarterback, but was never really great. And you have to be great, I think, to get into the Hall of Fame. So
Yeah, pretty much. That's why it's called the Hall of Fame.
yeah, Chibba Chibba Hall of Fame, fame, fame. Remember that song?
I remember.
All right, Andrew, let's wrap it up. Speaking of Hall of Famers, it was announced this week that Michael Jordan will be inducting the late, great Kobe Bryant in the Basketball Hall of Fame. We know that Kobe's loss has meant a lot to the basketball community. It's been very emotional even a year later, but he's getting into the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about Jordan inducting him and who and why that might not be a good idea or why we might think there might be better people. But Andrew, what is Kobe Bryant's legacy? He's getting into the Hall of Fame. What is his legacy? What are we going to take away from the career of the Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant?
So, up until Andrew Bynum was drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers out of high school, I think Andrew Bynum, he's from New Jersey. It was either St. Pat's or it was St. Joe's in Metuchen. I think it was St. Joe's in Metuchen, Andrew Bynum. Kobe in 1996 was the youngest player at the time to have ever been drafted to the NBA at 17 years old. He was so young that his dad actually had to sign his contract for him because he legally couldn't because he wasn't a legal adult. With that being said, Kobe he was the next generation. Like the Jordan era was over. It was coming to an end. And at the time, the Lakers were rebuilding. They had just acquired Shaq. And, they said, we need a face of this franchise. And Jerry West saw the Kobe interviews, and he said, this is the best player in this draft. And honestly, in the draft that featured Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, a bunch of future Hall of Famers, he was right. I think Kobe, the 5 championships speak for themselves. One with Shaq, one without Shaq. He was a Laker, played all 20 seasons of his entire NBA career with the Lakers. His final game, he finished with 60. I mean, tragic the way he went out, but, Kobe's legacy is just, he's an all-time great player. Like, he's one of the greatest players ever. He definitely shaped a lot of the players that play today. A lot of the guys looked up to him. Jason Tatum is one prime example. Even when he was coming in, he used to work out with Kobe. A lot of guys, they took Kawhi's another one. They took Kobe's moves and just tried to include them into their repertoire to be better. Like, that's the kind of player he was. And he was a fierce competitor. MVP. He was a defense. I don't know if he was ever defensive player of the year, but he was all defense. He was just a really good competitor. And the fact that Jordan is going to be inducting him into the Hall of Fame, I think, I think if Kobe was alive, he would do it. I think if there was one player that Kobe would pick to do it, I think it would be Jordan, the guy that he tried to emulate and be better than.
So I get that, right? And I actually want to talk about Kobe's legacy first before we get into, Jordan inducting him. But to me, Andrew, I think Kobe Bryant is going to be remembered as, yes, the best player in his generation, the best player, arguably of this century, like that we've had so far. But I think above all, and like to put it all together, I think Kobe Bryant's gonna be remembered as the most intense basketball player to ever play. He's good. When Kobe Bryant was locked in, Andrew, there was nobody more dangerous than him. When Kobe Bryant took shit personally, as Jordan said in that documentary, there was nobody who was more motivated and who would back it up given the opportunity. Even when he was older, even when his team was obviously not good, you still saw that intensity from Kobe. And like that's the thing. I think that intensity, that Mamba mentality is real. And it's because Kobe Bryant willed it into reality. It's because Kobe Bryant was on the grind and he wouldn't stop. And there's times where people thought, "Oh man, Kobe, he's doing too much. He's embarrassing these guys." Well, they should be better. If they were better, they wouldn't get embarrassed by Kobe. But the thing is, they weren't. They were not. Because Kobe Bryant is one of my favorite players. I think, if we're having a realistic conversation about best players of all time, he has to be in that conversation. And we can talk about that another day. But, going to Jordan, inducting him specifically, I know that, and I understand, right? Kobe Bryant and Jordan have this relationship. I understand that, a lot of people consider Kobe the number 2 to Jordan's number 1 on their all-time lists, right? But I do think there's one name, Andrew, that should be considered or should have at least been considered by the NBA to induct him, and I think it's Pau Gasol. And the reason I say that is because this wasn't just Kobe Bryant's teammate, right? They were close. Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol were like close like brothers. Like Kobe Bryant's kids now, like they look at Pau Gasol as like their uncle, as their it's kind
I
of.
think he's like the god. I think he's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one of them
I
is
think
like
he's like a father figure.
godfather. I think he's like the godfather to one of his daughters or something.
Yeah.
Like,
So they were close, and I think that to get that personal touch, especially after what happened, the tragic way that Kobe Bryant left, I think that you kind of need that. You could do both. I realistically think that the NBA can do both. You know why? Because Kobe was worth it. Because he meant to, like a lot of these players. There's no Trae Young without Kobe Bryant. There's no, like you said, Jason Tatum without Kobe Bryant. Kyrie Irving even says that Kobe Bryant inspired him. So a lot of these guys, like who maybe wouldn't be playing basketball otherwise, they were inspired by Kobe Bryant, and I think that at the end of the day, he obviously deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Whether Jordan inducts him, Pau Gasol, whoever, honestly, it doesn't matter. Kobe Bryant's gonna get his rightful moment to headline the Hall of Fame, and I think that's a big deal, and I can't wait to see it.
I just think back to just on a side note, I just think back to the way the media would always they try to tear him down. I remember the 2006 playoffs when they got on Kobe for shooting too much. They got on him for shooting too much and said he's not a team player. And then the same way he exposed the media. And then the very next night, I think he only took 6 shots. He took 5 in the first half and only 1 in the second. And his team got blown out. And it was basically his message to the media was like, don't ever call me a ball hog again, because without me, this team doesn't run. I think it was one of the most OG thing. One of the most OG. He was like, fine, I'm a ball hog. Fine, I won't shoot. And then the media shut up after that. They called it the Kobe Pout game. I think it was the biggest like baller thing I think Kobe ever did, was I'm not going to shoot then. I'm a ball hog. Fine, I'm just not going to shoot then.
That's like the definition. That's like the like the prime example of Jordan's, I took that personally kind of thing. Kobe took that personally, and man,
he's like, I'm a ball hog. All right, well, I'm not going to shoot then. And then they went and got blown out, and crazy.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Anyway, can't wait to see that. Andrew, final takes. Let's see. Let's wrap it up with some final takes. You got anything on your mind you want to talk about?
My New York Mets are in first place. I looked up. CBS Sports has us currently ranked in the power rankings number 4 in the rankings. We're looking good so far. I'm glad to see at least one New York baseball team is carrying the weight of the city, since that other one, the one that clearly spends more than us, isn't. I think this things are looking up for the blue and orange in basketball and in baseball. The Mets were looking good. The Knicks were looking really good. Future is bright. Future is bright in New York. My
I,
Titans, my Titans, I don't know, because the draft is scaring me because I don't know
what do
who
you?
we're gonna take.
I actually wanted to get your thoughts on this. What do you think about Chet Holmgren going to the Gonzaga Bulldogs?
I actually I forgot about that. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, go
So
ahead, talk about it.
Chad Holmgren, he is a unicorn. He is 7'1". He's got a 7'4" wingspan. He's got guard skills. He can shoot it out. He step out of the three. He's an elite shot blocker. He's the whole package. And this shows you how far that small little school in Spokane, Washington has come since 1999. They landed the number 1 player in the country in Chet Holmgren today. And this is what's even crazier about it was Jalen Suggs declared for the NBA draft today. Before the announcement, Jalen Suggs, this time last year, was the highest rated recruit in the history of Gonzaga. In the past 2 months, he is now the 3rd highest rated recruit in the history of Gonzaga because of the 2 kids they literally got in the last 2 months. They bring in this combo guard, Hunter Salas, who can do it all. His player comps, there aren't even player comps. He's just a super athletic freak, kind of like Suggs, 6'5", that can do it all. And then they brought in the number 1 player in the country, Chet Holmgren. This is what was interesting about it. If you look at 24/7 Sports, the recruiting website that talks about like recruits and everything like that, only 6 players since they started doing like the whole rating system, 6 players have been given a rating of 1.0000. And those guys are, some of those names on the list are RJ Barrett, Andrew Wiggins, I'm trying to think who was just I'll tell you some of the names that weren't on the list though. Anthony Davis wasn't on that list. Karl Towns wasn't on that list. These are guys that are perennial all-stars in the NBA that are big men, and they were not ones. So just so you know, this kid Chet Holmgren, he's the real deal. And you know what? Gonzaga came up short this year. They're losing Suggs, but they'll reload. And you know what? It's scary to think about this. Drew Timmy's going to come back. He's probably going to come back. He's going to be the preseason National Player of the Year, and he was already a stud. They might be better next year than they were this year, which is a scary thought because a team that only lost 1 game in the national championship, and they got better, adding a unicorn and a stud guard to come with what they're bringing back. I think Gonzaga's, they might be preseason number 1. They might be preseason number 1 again.
Might be. I think they're making moves, man. We talked about it, like Gonzaga, like people. I think people are finally recognizing them. Like, we already knew they were one of the best, or like organizations or I guess programs, right, in the country. But
people are gonna hate. People are gonna hate. So the problem with a lot of these casuals is that people assume that if you go to a school like Gonzaga, see, one thing that a lot of these people don't get is talent is talent. So no matter where you go to school, if you're talented, talent is talent. Derrick Rose went to the University of Memphis and was the number 1 pick. Ja Morant did 2 years at Murray State and was the number 2 pick. Talent is talent. Whether you go to Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, Syracuse, Arizona, Texas, any of those big name schools, talent is talent. So a kid like Suggs going to Gonzaga, Hunter Salas going to Gonzaga, now the number 1 overall player going to Gonzaga. I saw people, they were making jokes like, does this mean now he drops from the number 1 player to the number 50 player because he's not going to a big name school? I get the jokes because a lot of people like to hate on Gonzaga. But listen, at the end of the day, whether they're playing real competition within their conference or not, talent is talent. Whether you're playing against real competition, if you got a team, if you got 2, 3, 4 NBA players on your team, whether you're playing Duke every night or whether you're playing Monmouth every night, those dudes are still NBA players, and they're still as talented as they are. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, straight facts, man. Can't Can't deny the real takes we've been dishing out. You know how long we've been dishing them out now, Andrew? A whole year. A whole
Yes,
year.
sir. This marks our
Up
anniversary.
April 21st marks our 1 year. We'll do like a little. We'll try to put together a little special show maybe to mark our 1 year anniversary. But man, we've been doing this a long time. And remember, we started out as a podcast, and now we're.
Yes, we did. Now we do live shows
Yeah, I do live shows
every Monday. Every Monday, 8
Every-
p.m. Eastern time.
every Monday night. Also, Real Take Russell Talk. You're gonna see me and Trevor Sutton on there. Trevor put a little thing in the chat about the Yankees. We'll see. I'll talk to him about that. But Real Take Russell Talk live tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. We're gonna talk about WWE, that terrible Jake Paul fight, as well as stuff in AEW, much more out of professional wrestling. That's Real Take Russell Talk tomorrow night. Remember to like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. For Lil Penny Andrew,
What's up?
I'm Omar, and we will see you guys same time, same place for our NFL Draft Special, or NFL Draft Preview Special. We have an NFL Draft Special, night of the draft, but follow us on social media. You'll get the full picture. Anyway, we'll see you next time. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, keep it real.